Hello and welcome to the ABCs of the 80s. This is the show where we take an encyclopedia-like look at some of the most awesome bits of the 1980s. Each episode, I give you 3 different entries, all starting with the same letter. This week's letter is A. What better way to kick off the show than at the beginning of the alphabet? Now the first entry is Airwolf. Airwolf was a television series that ran from 1984 to 1987. It totaled 55 episodes. The first 3 seasons aired on CBS, but the last one aired on the USA Network. In the pilot movie that kicked off the series, we see Airwolf, the awesome gunship helicopter, being stolen by its lead designer during a weapons test. Airwolf is then turned on all the military officials in attendance, and all of them are killed but one, Michael Goldsmith Briggs III, who also goes by the code name of Archangel. After the attack, Archangel, who now sports an eye patch and walks using a cane, enlists the help of Chief, Test Pilot, and Recluse Stringfellow Hawk to help retrieve the helicopter. Stringfellow is assisted by pilot and father figure Dominique Santori, played by Ernest Borgnine, to help track down Airwolf. Tracking the helicopter to Libya, Hawk and Santori turn the gunship on the designer and obliterate him in a hail of missiles. But they do not take Airwolf back to the military. No. They decide to hide Airwolf in a large natural cavern, which they dub the Lair. They refuse to return the gunship until Stringfellow's brother St. is found. St. was a POW in Vietnam, and his whereabouts are unknown. Archangel offers Stringfellow a deal. If he can continue to do covert operations for the CIA, he will help protect him for the theft of Airwolf. What a great premise for a show, with a continuing story arc as they try to find Stringfellow's brother St. Now, Stringfellow and St. What great names for a show, by the way. Now, week after week, Airwolf would go on different covert missions and stop the bad guy. Great thing. And a great piece of military hardware that kids just eat up. That was one of the things I loved about the show, was the helicopter. Now, a neat little tidbit that I didn't really realize until doing a little bit of research on this is that when you watch the show, when they deploy their weapons, they pop out of unassuming places on the helicopter. Now, that was a plot device of the show that I didn't realize, that Airwolf was meant to look like a civilian helicopter, albeit a very expensive civilian helicopter, until it deployed its hardware. Now, Airwolf, the name, comes from wolf in sheep's clothing, because it would be an unassuming helicopter that would then transform into this killing machine. Now, the Airwolf logo of the wolf with like bat wings actually has sheep's fleece on it. I never realized that as a kid. I'm super excited, and it's awesome that I read about that, because that makes it even cooler. What made Stringfellow such a great hero of this story was he himself was unassuming. And I guess that's the theme of the whole series. See, Stringfellow lived in a cabin out in the middle of nowhere. He seemed like a very simple guy, but he was a graduate of engineering school. He was like a genius. And a lot of the episodes would show him playing his Stradivarius cello out on the water of the lake at his cabin. And he had an old hound dog by his side. And it's the simpleness of that character, coupled with him being like a genius, that is the sheep and wolf's clothing in that scenario. Now, Ernest Borgnine, this was probably my first exposure to him. What a great actor. The older I got, I've experienced more of his films, and I love the dude. I mean, what a great guy. And his character, Dominique, was awesome. I mean, he was just like a normal private pilot guy that would drop everything to go on these adventures with Stringfellow. A is for Airwolf, and it was a great show. The next entry in the Encyclopedia of the 80s is Asteroids. Asteroids was an arcade space shooter that was released in late 1979, but it experienced popularity and success all the way up into the 80s. Designed by Lyle Rains, Ed Logg, and Dominique Walsh, Asteroids put players in the middle of an asteroid field that was periodically assaulted by flying saucers. The object of the game was to shoot and destroy all the asteroids and the flying saucers, while not colliding with the asteroids or the return fire of the flying saucers. Asteroids was one of the first major arcade hits that sold over 70,000 arcade cabinets. Based on an unfinished game called Cosmos, Asteroids took inspiration in Space War, Computer Space, and Space Invaders. The game was rendered on a vector display in a two-dimensional view that wraps around both screen accesses. So what that means is, as an asteroid would float off the screen this way, it would come barreling in the other way, and so on and so forth. Hailed as one of the top games of all time, Atari earned an estimated $150 million on the sale of the arcade cabinets, and it's estimated that arcade owners earned almost $500 million just on coin drops alone. Asteroids is one of the all-time classic games of the golden era of video games. Without it, who knows where we would be nowadays in the landscape of video games. It is one of the best, and I still enjoy playing it to this day. So, A is for Asteroids. Now we take a look at a character from the 80s, and this is G.I. Joe's Alpine. Corporal Albert M. Pine, or Alpine, what a code name. Corporal Albert M. Pine, or Alpine, grew up in the Snake River Plain of Idaho. Surrounded on all four sides by mountains, Albert started mountain climbing at an early age. Once an accountant, Albert graduated from Ranger School at Fort Benning. Using accounting as a secondary specialty, Alpine loves to remind his teammates that the FBI had taken down more bad guys using bookkeeping than it did by kicking in doors. Alpine is a classic character that really came to life in the animated series. Alpine, with his sidekick Bazooka, if you want to call him that, were a great comedic duo, and they went on some of the best adventures in the series. Now, action figure of Alpine is one of the best. Well-made figure, well-designed, and came with some of the best accessories. So A is for Alpine. Yo Joe. This has been the first episode of ABCs of the 80s. Sorry if it's a little rough around the edges. I'm still walking my way through this, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. If you want to say something, leave a comment. And if you don't want to miss any more of these episodes, hit subscribe. And hit the little bell if you want to be reminded every time there's a new episode. So until next time, my name's Rob. Keep being rad and stay dorky.